I will call to order the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting for October 11th, 2022. We all stand for the invocation. Most gracious and Heavenly Father, once again we come before you asking for your blessings over our meeting this evening. Heavenly Father, we give thanks to you for all that you do for us. Continue to bless us and guide us. I'll bless and ask in your precious name. Amen. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the minutes reflect that all board members are present. To my far right, Mr. Clay Forehand from Madison. Mr. Jeff Black next to him from Western Carolina. To my right is Mr. Jeff Seeley from Bowling Green. To my left, Ms. Nancy Long from Port Royal. To my far left, Mr. Floyd Thomas from Mattaponi. I'm Reggie Underwood from the Reedy Church District. Opening board comments, Mr. Forehand.
Just a couple of quick ones. Just wanted to give the board's feedback. Gotten a lot of positive feedback regarding our vote some months back regarding the softball field lights. Some folks are very excited about that and hope that's a step forward for the program. I'm also looking forward to our meeting with VDOT regarding the various issues. And I think that's a staff. We have that coming up soon. Talk about the next meeting. As well as I've been spending a lot of time in the Dawn area, and I drive by the library frequently, and I was wondering if we could start the process to get a more permanent sign out front for the library. Just maybe nothing fancy, but it's I don't know, it just doesn't look permanent. So just think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forehand. Mr. Black.
Yeah, just I have real quick. Number one, I want to piggyback on what Mr. Forehand said. I've getting a lot of positive feedback on how quickly the road project is moving along on Ladysmith, so that's really nice. And I think they're doing a heck of a job. And from what I see, it looks like it's going to be a really well worth our money spent. Second thing, I do want to apologize at the last meeting. I can get passionate sometimes, and I do want to apologize for my outburst. I don't apologize for what I said. I do apologize for just saying it at a wrong time. So that's all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Seeley.
I'd just like to remind everybody that this Saturday is Harvest Festival in Bowling Green, so you're going to see streets being lined off on Friday night and closed very early Saturday morning. So just reminding everybody it's coming. It's supposed to be a pretty day, and I hope everybody comes.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Mrs. Long.
I was going to remind everyone also about the Harvest Festival. It's always fun, and you get to see so many people you don't get to see at other times through the year. And so I encourage everyone to come support our local booths and citizens and all their wonderful crafts and creations, and listen to the music and just have a good family time together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Long. Mr. Thomas.
Yes, at the last meeting, I'd asked board members to consider, I know we have a program for Veterans Day on Friday the 11th, and our meeting is on the 10th, and I'd ask board members to consider asking veterans that they know to come to the board meeting so we could recognize them and say thank you, and really look for a couple of board members or a couple of veterans who have distinguished service awards, Bronze Stars, Silver Stars. I would hope somebody knows of a Congressional Medal of Honor winner in the county if there is one, but it would be nice just to recognize them and maybe read a citation or two. So just a reminder for the rest of the board, if we could make that happen at the next meeting, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I think we agreed to do that. So absolutely, we'll do whatever it takes. Thank you. Just a couple comments. Today is, or tomorrow, I guess, is Native American Day. Certainly we want to celebrate our Native Americans. As you know, the fair ended this week, well, last week, so actually Sunday. was very successful with the exception of had a little rain the last couple of days. Ms. Jolla from State Fair will be coming to us and presenting a report on attendance and some of her preliminary revenue numbers, but I think you'll be pleased that based on our conversation, that revenue from the vendors was up at one point almost 60+%. So I'm looking forward to that conversation and having her report to the board. I do want to mention that I've still talked to the neighbors. There's 6 neighbors who are affected by the concert series, and we continue to work together. And my suggestion to them was sit down with Ms. Jolla after she's had a chance to take a deep breath, maybe in December. Sit down and talk about what worked, what didn't work, and see if you can't come to some agreement and some understanding. And so I'm hoping that'll take place. I told them I would not facilitate the meeting, but I would certainly attend the meeting. I think they need to have a relationship with the State Fair and Mr. Kruger, and I think that's something that can work. And when there's a partnership, it always just seems to work better. So that's going to take place, and once we move, a few feelings aside, I think it'll be good for the county. So certainly, I'll report back to the board. The last concert was last Sunday. That was the last for the year. So looking forward to hearing from the concert series promoters as well. And those are my comments. Yes, ma'am.
I also I was looking at my calendar. I realized we don't have another meeting before the Frog Level Festival, which is on the
Correct. Yep.
29th. So you might want to put that also on your calendars. And just to clarify, Mr. Thomas mentioned our next meeting is on the 10th. That is a Thursday. It is not the Tuesday. It is a Thursday. So anyone who's interested in attending the meeting on November 10th, just remember
Because
it's
of
a
Election
Thursday
Day.
night.
Right.
We moved it due to the election day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Long. And you're right. Thanks for reminding me that we do have the Frog Level Festival in my district. Thank you, Mrs. Long. Amendments to the agenda. If there are none, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I make a motion, we adopt the agenda as presented, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Motion is moved that we accept the agenda as presented. It's been properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, agenda item number 1 today is presentation of reports. I had, on our staff call, I had asked Ms. Upshaw about the usage in the libraries to see where we are. So Megan, thanks for coming. I appreciate Ms. Upshaw, and the floor is all yours. And I do want to mention to the board members that the screen bulb is out, so you have to look on the computers in front of you. Okay.
Bulb's more expensive than the projector.
Right. So
Right. Good evening, board. As Mr. Underwood said, he asked me to provide some statistics. Just as a note, these are the same statistics that we use to for our federal reporting every year. So if a definition doesn't make sense, it's the federal government. I do want to include one small caveat. In May, we had a server crash in our library system. David did amazing work, got us back up and running, but we did have some data losses. So the numbers should have been different, but I don't think it's really anything that would be statistically significant. All right, so our first slide here is the number of active library cards. Active library cards are defined as any library card that was used in the past fiscal year. So the total of 1,565, that means we had 1,565 active people come into the library and use the library last year. This is a 48.7% increase over last year. The other number we have for patrons is our number of registered borrowers. That number is 15,906. Normally, we don't have such a big gap between active cards and registered borrowers. Obviously, the pandemic has been a big issue, and partly because of the pandemic, we have not purged any borrower records just in case people had just stayed away because of the pandemic and that kind of thing. So we're hopefully going to start that up again, but for the last 3 years, we haven't had any purges. The next slide is the number of library visits. So this is anybody who walks into the library, whether it's to spend 5 minutes in the computer lab or to spend all day working from online. They count as a visit. I have included the last 3 years for that number to show you guys. I think it's a very clear example of how the pandemic affected the library and library usage. So we in 2022 we had 16,254 visits. This is a 106% increase over the previous year, but we are it actually should say 51% of our pre-pandemic numbers. The 49% is the percent of drop basically over 2022. We're slowly making our way back, but it is, we're moving slowly. Right. And these are the last two total visit numbers broken down by branch. So you can see basically which branches. Obviously, the Ladysmith branch is very busy. It's in the middle of a housing community. But we have seen an increase in all of our library branches over last year, ranging anywhere from 30% at the Port Royal branch to 139% at the Ladysmith branch. This slide is our collection items. So these are every item that's in the library system. Basically, we have 45,745 physical items. So that's actual items you can walk into the library and pick out. Counts the computer lab too, so you can't really take that home with you. But and then the 27,459, those are the electronic resources. So ebooks, e-audiobooks, databases, that kind of stuff. We also have 32 kits, so nature backpacks, things of that nature, and our 20 new mobile hotspots that are not included in the pie graph because they're just too small. All right. So looking at the circulation, this is the collection numbers. This is how those collections circulated last year. It's interesting. I find it interesting that we had more. The percentage of checkouts in our electronic materials increased over what they only represent 38% of the collection, but we had 44% of our circulation come from electronics. The physical includes all adult YA children's books and the AV items, and the other includes our computer lab, uncatalogued items like paperbacks, mobile hotspots, those kinds of things. So our total for last year was 35,731 checkouts, and that's a 63.4% increase from last year. And finally, I just wanted to highlight some of the successes that we had last fiscal year, as well as some things that we're looking forward to in this current fiscal year. First, we have our mobile hotspots. As you can see on the screen there was 150 checkouts through September. That's only 9 months of circulation. We didn't get those until December, in the middle of December last year. They're going like hotcakes, and we will probably expand that program in the future. Second, we were able to return to in-person programming last year. So we had 318 total programs and over 1,200 attendees. But we are still including some passive programming for patrons who aren't comfortable coming in and sitting in a group. But also it seems to work really well for older kids. They have soccer practice or, whatever, and sometimes they can't come to a scheduled library program, but they can still take a take-home kit home with them. And finally, year. The things we're looking forward to, we're already proud of these 3 things so far this year. The first is our privacy pod at the Ladysmith branch. Once that bad boy gets assembled, it's going to be a great small space for patrons who need to make a phone call, take a telehealth visit, that kind of thing. It is nearly soundproof because the door obviously can't be soundproofed, but we're very excited to get that. That was part of our ARPA sub grant. We actually tacked that on last year, and you guys appropriated that money to us. Next, our new library website launched at the beginning of August. As I said there, it's a streamlined appearance. That's twofold. It makes it easier for patrons to find the resources that we have available on our website, but it also uses less data. So for patrons who live in areas where there's limited connectivity, it doesn't take as long to load the library's webpage. So we're hoping that this will push the access. We try to think of the library website as a virtual branch that patrons can access 24/7, 365. So, and then finally, after many technical issues, including the server crash in May, our self-checkout machines are back up and running at Bowling Green and Ladysmith. There seems to be some kind of problem with the machine in Port Royal, or in Dawn, but Kyle is working on that as we speak to get that repaired. So that should be up soon. And that's it for me, unless the board has any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Upshaw. Mr. Forehand, questions? Mr. Black?
Yeah, just real quick. As far as the mobile hotspots are concerned, is there a way that we can push that information out more than just, I know it's on your website. I can help push it out too. And I think some people know about it, but I think there's a lot of people that don't. And I know that would mean more circulation for you guys. And I think you said you were going to probably get some more, but that is something that until we get internet fully for the next year, year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is, until we're 100%, it would be something that people would definitely want to be able to use. So if we could just kind of push that information out. This is all great data. I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Seeley?
Can you geographically tell us where the hotspots are going? Is that something as a data point for us, is that possible?
I'm not sure that we could really reliably come up with that data. I could tell you where they're circulating, which branches they're circulating from, or where the patron who checks them out lives.
I don't need an address. I'm just looking for dots on a county map to look at what areas are really going to those so that we can help you get better at this.
Okay.
All right.
I could pull that and see what I can work
Thank
out for
you.
Mrs. Long?
I was curious about the privacy booths. I'm sure they're probably not cheap, but it certainly with telemedical coming out and taxes and everything else, when do you think the other branches will, at least the other main branches will have those available?
Not sure. This was something that the Library of Virginia sort of tacked on at the end of the ARPA sub-grant process. They were like, oh, we have this extra money. Here's $6,000 to buy one. So obviously that's something that we can include in like next year's budget or that kind of thing too.
$6,000 for
Ours was the one we purchased from Zen Booth is just under $5,000. That includes the shipping and all of that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, that one's not ADA compliant. It's not quite enough space in there. So if we wanted to get one that was more ADA compliant, they are much more expensive. So we would like to do it further down the line. The Bowling Green branch actually has our genealogy room that we use, sort of serves the same purpose. It's mostly soundproof, it's bigger, that kind of thing. So it would probably just be like the Dawn branch. I don't know if we have enough room for it in Port Royal, but
we wouldn't, but maybe we could think of another privacy like the one they have in Bowling Green.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you. The privacy booth is a great idea, and I think we ought to try to expand that as much because that's a small investment to the service we can provide for citizens, especially since there's so many who don't have internet access fully, and there's so many who now we're using telemedicine. I think that's a great idea. With regard to the 20 hotspots, where are they located?
So 8 are located at the Ladysmith branch, 5 at Bowling Green and Dawn, and then there are 2 at Port Royal. I've actually reached out to Khajiit, which is our vendor for that, and to see about adding about 5 more to start off with. It seems like in the last several weeks, it's really blown up in like Port Royal and Dawn, where they're at the point where they don't have any to loan out currently. So
Yeah, I think Ladysmith, I know, has a lot of internet access. I would think that Dawn and probably Port Royal would need more, and I'm sure there's parts of Bowling Green and Mattapanai that might. So I'm glad you took my suggestion to do that. I think that's a great idea. I'd be happy if we could double that. So, but that's something for you to tell us. And I think when you get Mr. Seeley's numbers, we can figure out where they're going and find out. The last thing is the server crash.
Yeah.
Are we doing regular backups?
yes.
We are now?
Oh, we were before.
Oh.
Yeah. It was just
Regular meaning daily?
yes. We
Oh.
have server tapes that we change out every day.
Okay, but you said there was data loss.
Part of the data got corrupted from the week before, and so that's why that week is gone. And then, people who come in to use the computer, they don't get recorded in that time period when we were down because of.
I'm very interested in backups, and I think I mentioned this to Mr. Sadler with all of the internet piracy and bad things that go on. It's good for us to have a backup in case the system gets corrupted in any sense. We could just go back to another day or another week. So, all right, keep it up. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I have just a couple questions regarding library cards. Is there any type of program with schools to get our children more active with the library process? And I know years ago when I was a kid, I got my first library card, and it was exciting to go to the library. Are we working with schools and churches to try to get our membership up in terms of use of library cards and our children coming to the library? What kind of program do we have?
We are not doing anything currently with that. We had a program several years ago where I think it was first grade students, all the first grade students in all the schools got sent home with a library card application. The problem was we had a lot of ones that never came back, or they never got parent signatures on them, that kind of thing. And then we also had a large number of kids who would show up when they turned 18 and be like, oh, you already have a library card and it has $5 in overdue fees on it or things like that. So I think a previous director decided it wasn't a great idea, but it's definitely something that we can look into bringing back.
Yeah, with the learning loss that has occurred because of COVID, it's critical that we get our kids back reading.
Yeah.
And I think anything that we can do to stimulate the reading process, particularly for our young ones now, with the learning loss, is critical. So I would really ask that you look into that and see if there's a program that might be beneficial to the library in terms of getting usage up, as well as getting more of our students and our young people involved in the process. My second concern for this board is, like we talked about having leftover money from ARPA, and I think that there are things like this for the library and the hotspots that we should be moving a little quicker. If we have funds that we could move to get a privacy room or more hotspots, particularly in the areas, Port Royal and Dawn particularly, where we don't have the internet service. These hotspots are critical to our children who are trying to do some online learning. So it's critical that as we use a hybrid model in schools, that we have internet access. And you're going to find that it's not the virtual learning that was the issue. It was lack of. That's the issue. So we have to make it more accessible for our children. So I think anything that we can do, and I would hope that you would bring a recommendation to this board as to how much what the funding would be or your need and your level of funding to increase that number of hotspots, particularly in areas where there is not internet accessibility. So I'm looking to push that a little forward.
Can
further.
I ask how much the hotspots cost again? I think it was like $200 for each mobile hotspot.
The device is about $100, and then the service on them, it went down this year, so it's about $3,800 a year for the 20 hotspots.
So another $3,800 would get us another 20 hotspots?
We'd have to we don't have enough cold stock devices to do 20, but we had been looking at 5 because we have some cold stock for replacements and things like that we were going to use, so that we wouldn't have an additional device cost. But
But if the device cost is $100,
Right.
I'm saying right now we just double it and get another 20.
I can get that together and get with my vendor and make sure that all the numbers are straight and provide that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Black.
just a quick question. How often are those things updated as far as like, I know like with a router and so forth, you have to update it every,
We don't do any updating. Khajiit takes care of all of that for us. So whenever they're turned on, basically, and connect to the internet, they're running updates on them.
Yeah.
okay, so
That's a firmware update. The chips inside the hotspot get updated. It's not a software thing. So
okay.
So if you had the funding to buy another 20 or another 30, what would be your time limit to get that taken care of? How quickly could you?
It would really just depend on the vendor to make sure that they had the stock available to get it out to us. It was a pretty quick turnaround when we ordered, but we also had planned on ordering, and then the General Assembly got involved in our subgrant. So we had a long delay, and they were basically holding us some. So I would just need to get with Khajiit and figure that out for you guys.
I would ask this board to well, if you're gonna make the motion, then I'll stop right there and allow you to make the motion. That's
but you go ahead and finish.
my next comment. I would ask this board to agree to move money into a fund for the library to buy those hotspots, and we do that immediately.
If that was your last question, I was going to make a motion to do that when we were finished with the question. So I'm going to make that motion, but Mr. Forehand has a question.
What's the usage rate? I mean, are all of them checked out right now, or one of them checked out of the 20? I mean, what are we looking at?
14 out right now.
Okay, is that normal?
In the last couple of weeks, it's normal. We usually have at least 1 or 2 available at each of the branches. It just seems like it's really sort of blown up here in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
And I do want to say that we do allow patrons to put them on hold. So if you're at, say, a Dawn or Port Royal where there's not one, we'll put one on hold. And as soon as I see it, I usually just run it up to that branch to drop it off for them to pick up. So
That would mean that they're completely out. Like, say, Port Royal has, I think we said it had 3? 2?
it's 2.
2.
Yeah.
So both of them are checked out.
Yep.
I don't know. I guess it's if we don't have them all out, what's the rush in buying them right now?
But I think part of it was what Mr. Black said is we talked about this program last year this time, and I don't think we're advertising the program as much as possible.
Okay.
I've got people in the lower part of Mattaponi and all over Mattaponi who don't have internet, who may not be aware and could use this. And again, it's the same as telehealth. If I've got a doctor's appointment, I could check one out, have that at home, and then return it the next day or whatever. Plus, we need to have our kids doing this. We need to have job hunters and folks that are selling things on the internet do all of this. We just need to advertise it more. This is a really good thing for the position we're in now.
I'm like I said, if we're going to buy them, I don't want to make sure it's not just a feel good thing. We're going to buy more. We're going to have 40 available instead of 20, but we only have 10 of them that are being used right now. Either way, we can have 100 and only 10 are getting used right now. So again, if we're going to buy them, let's advertise it. Let's use them. Get them out there.
That's
That's
the point.
my only reservation whatsoever. Just want to make sure that we're making an effort to get them
Well,
out.
I'm pretty sure if we advertise, we'll make sure that the 20 and now 40 will be used a lot.
Right, I think what we'll do, I'll come back to you, Mr. Black. I think what we'll do there, Mr. Forehand, is after we have a campaign to let our community know that they're available, then we'll see what the uptick is and if there's any uptick. But I can probably almost bet you $20 that they'll be in use once people know that they're available. So I think it's a good idea. I think data is always informational, always appropriate. Mr. Black?
Just real one quick question. When someone checks it out, how long do they have it for?
3 weeks.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Our last question is, how much does it cost to check out one of the hotspots?
They are free to check out. It's
Could you
as
say
long as
that again for the people in the back row?
They are free for people to check out.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would restate the motion to authorize the library to purchase another 20 with funds, I guess, as Mr. Cully would say, coming from the unencumbered balance.
From the ARPA fund.
From the ARPA fund,
ARPA
thank
fund.
you.
There's a motion that we give the library permission to spend money to purchase 20 hotspots from the ARPA funds. There's a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Black.
Is it not to exceed
Cully.
3,800? Is that what you want?
We're gonna move it from COVID testing. That's where we.
COVID testing, right.
Where we had money
Okay.
left over in.
That's
the
fine.
funds.
That's still the ARPA fund, right, Mr. Cully? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So there's a
fine.
motion and a proper second that we move the funds from the ARPA funds, specifically from the COVID testing area, to buy the hotspots. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Megan. Good job. Next on the agenda for our presentations is the results of our 2022 tax exempt financial requests for proposals. Mr. Geis.
Very good. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Good
Pleasure
evening.
to be with you all. My name's Stephen Geis. I'm here on behalf of Courtney Rogers to present the 2022 tax exempt financing RFP results. So following Courtney's last discussion with you all in September, we distributed a request for proposals to our banking list, which consists of local, regional, and national lending institutions for the purposes of obtaining a commercial loan for the 22 financing, which will fund the projects there on page 1 of the presentation, which are a variety of vehicles, fire station construction costs for Sparta and Carmel Church, and some utility projects. So the RFP provided 2 security packages for the potential lenders to consider. The first was a one loan structure where all of the projects would be financed under one loan in the form of a lease revenue bond, with the Carmel Church Fire Station serving as collateral. The second option was a 2 loan structure to finance the equipment under an equipment lease, and then the balance of the projects, the utility projects, the fire station projects, and the aerial ladder truck deposit under a lease revenue bond, with the Carmel Church Fire Station serving as collateral. Additionally, because the various assets have different useful lives, we asked for the lenders to provide interest rates for each of those amortization terms, as well as a single rate for all of the different term lengths. And on September 27th, we received 6 interest rate proposals, 2 of which the top 2 were under security option 2. As you'll see on page 3, Truist and Webster Bank were the top 2 proposals. Truist ultimately provided the lowest cost of borrowing, with a true interest cost, or a blended interest rate, for the equipment lease at 398 and a 397 for the lease revenue bond. Some more details regarding the Truist proposal can be found on the following page. They had very flexible prepayment provisions, and they offered 2 options for you all to consider. We would recommend going forward with the prepayable in whole at any time with a 1% penalty, And that is just to maintain flexibility in the event interest rates go back down. We could potentially refinance it and achieve a lower cost of borrowing.
Question there, the 1% penalty is on what's remaining or the entire thing?
That's correct.
What's remaining?
The remaining at the time of the prepayment.
Thank you.
Is that something that's, I don't recall seeing those on previous proposals. Is that something that they're adding now?
Different banks provide different proposals. We see it sometimes on some, and then others we don't. I think given the environment that we're in now, we're starting to see more loans with prepayment penalties.
Okay.
Page 5 has the estimated total debt service on an annual fiscal year basis. You will notice the payments decline as the debt associated with the projects with shorter useful lives rolls off. So that is why the payments decline there over the 20-year period.
Is there a listing that shows which items on the original list are 5, 10, and 20 year?
There's not in this presentation, but we can provide that.
All right. It's just curiosity more than anything else. I mean, I got a good idea. What's that? The cars and then the fire trucks are 10, if I remember correctly. And then structures are 20. Okay.
So our recommendation, I'm sorry.
Flint finances this.
So our recommendation would be to move forward with the Truist proposal. They offered the lowest cost of borrowing. Their prepayment terms were more flexible than Webster's. Webster's actually had a no-call period, so you wouldn't be able to refinance or pay off the debt during that period. The interest rate is fixed through final maturity, so what you see in this presentation is what y'all will pay as far as the interest rate goes. There's no change there. And the interest rate is fixed between now and closing, so it won't change between now and the closing date. On page
Thank you,
7,
Mr. Geis. That's the end of your, let me see if the board has any
Sure.
questions, certainly. Mr. Thomas, no, Mr. Forehand,
No, I asked all mine already.
is that?
I asked all mine already.
All right, thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Seeley?
I'm just curious how this ties into consent agenda item D. And so I was just gonna pull that so we could get an explanation of how that lays into this. Because now I do realize that this presentation is actually attached to that whole agenda item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, that's why I was gonna pull, I wasn't gonna, I just wanted to hear that explanation and then vote on it there. Yeah, but I want to pull that so we can hear a little bit more how that's, because if you notice, there's several contracts
And
in there that just caught me by surprise. So
sure.
if we could just wait till then, I understand what we're doing now. That helps.
right. Right. Ms. Long, any questions regarding the presentation?
No, sir.
Mr. Thomas? All right, Mr. Geis, thank you very much. I'm
Thank you.
sure we'll have some debate in just a few minutes once we get to the consent agenda. Thank you, sir. Thank you, board. Next on the agenda are appointments. Planning Commission for Mattapanai.
I'm not ready at this point in time. I'll
Right.
try next month.
And there is an appointment that's due in Reedy Church, which will be, I will make that appointment in November. Also, the Economic Development Authority for Madison, Mr. Forehand.
I was going to ask staff if the current member wants to continue. Any idea? Don't know. Okay. He does. Okay. I'm open to him just staying on. So if someone wants to reach out to him and see if that's an option.
What was that last comment? I didn't hear your last comment, Mr. So, Mr. Forehand, you wanted to
Did you want a motion to
motion to
approve?
approve that person? Or you're not ready yet? We can do it in November?
Yeah, do it in November.
Okay,
Everybody else?
I then we'll do it in November. Thank you. Healthy Generations, that's Mrs. Pat Wright, I believe. And Ms. Wright is on the representative for the board, and Ms. Wright has been on the Healthy Generations and has done a good job. So I'd recommend to the board that we reappoint Ms. Pat Wright to the Healthy Generations Board of Directors.
Do you want that, you making that as a motion or? is
Yes.
that- I'll second that.
So it's been motion and proper second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Pat Wright will be the representative on trial AAA. All right. Next on the agenda is
Mr. Wilson?
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the agenda which should be pulled? I think Mr. Seeley's at item D.
Item D, sir.
Item D. Mr. Forehand,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I can go ahead and knock that out, keep it off the agenda for November, my appointment.
you want to go ahead and move the appointment?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll go back.
I was drawing a blank there for a moment, and
That's okay. You can.
my
it's-
green light was on, but nothing was happening.
You
so.
can have it.
Ah.
It's okay. Brain fog happens.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Mickey Tingler to continue on with the EDA, please.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a proper second that we appoint Mr. Mickey Tingler to the Economic Development Authority from Madison. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now back to the consent agenda, Mr. Forehand. Any items you wish to pull from the agenda?
No, I just concur with Mr. Seeley's pulling D.
Okay. Mr. Black? None? Okay. Mr. Seal, I have yours. Anything else other than D? Ms. Long?
No. I
Mr.
was gonna make
Thomas?
a motion to accept.
I had a correction to the minutes. Actually, I'm sorry. A correction to the minutes. It was actually regarding the minutes from January of this year. It didn't say that I asked to allow board members to read letters. And that's all I wanted to add. It just mentioned the fact that we had a motion and a second. It didn't mention that. So if we could just add that before the motion. I can't seem to find it right now, but
Okay. So you want the minutes from
if the
the
minutes
January meeting to reflect?
that I asked the board to modify the rules to allow board members to read letters from citizens if the board desired.
Right.
And that was all.
You want that added to the minutes?
I'd like that added to the
Okay.
minutes. I'm sure Mrs. Hall can take care of that.
All right. So Mr. Thomas has requested that the January minutes reflect his comments regarding having board members make comments, and that be allowed to occur, correct? Anybody have any issue? Can I get a motion to approve agenda item A with that change?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second that we approve agenda item A with the noted changes regarding Mr. Thomas' comments from January. Mr. Seeley, agenda item, I'm sorry. Anything else on the agenda that anybody wishes to pull? We can go ahead and approve the agenda with the exception, take a motion to approve the agenda with the exception of item D.
So moved.
There's a motion to approve the agenda item with the exception of item D and the changes that we made to agenda item A, which has already been approved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Seeley, agenda item D under consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of my confusions in looking at this is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, looks like 8 different contracts to be signed in this. Should the funds allocated for the various and sundry portions of this be allocated by by each contract?
All right.
Because I mean, we're doing ground lease, I see bond purchase, I see project fund agreement, lease, equipment lease purchase agreement. I don't know the answer to that. And when I was reading this, it doesn't really break it down like that, which is why I had a hard time reading this, I guess.
We end up with these documents every time. I was the one that said we ought to just put them all in there so you could see, because we end up having to sign all these various documents, the chairman and I, normally. They're not unusual. The ground lease is the collateral, basically, of the fire station being its own collateral.
Okay.
And then these other leases are basically what they are. It's a lease purchase arrangement, and it's all set up. And that's what involves is the EDA, who actually is the financing agent of this, and the one borrowing the money and then sort of leasing it to us. It allows you have basically the board has general obligation borrowing authority. And so you can go to referendum and borrow money under a GO bond. And we've done that before. But when you get into this lease financing, it's a mechanism set up by state law, but it includes the EDA as the instrument for that. And so these documents, the EDA has got a couple of documents that they've got to approve as well at their meeting Thursday 20th. But yours are first and obviously more important to start the ball rolling. But these are typical. I can't explain you all the legalese, but these are. But we've got books of these with every borrower.
I was just looking, I thought I had a comment on one particular one. I started to read these and quickly glazed over.
That's why we have lawyers.
I understand. It was interesting to me, there was no financial amount attached to each one of these. And I guess I was just curious how that flowed down. Is it based on the lender and what we've borrowed for? Is it coded somehow to that? Or who gets to be the arbiter of that?
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer how the documents all tie. The ground lease one clearly is the one tied to the building money. So what we plan to,
Right.
and so most all of these have to have some collateral. So like the cars,
The cars, the
are the
collateral.
collateral. The fire truck is
It's the collateral. Right.
And so those things are put together between the Davenport team and Sands
Sans Anderson.
Sands' team of lawyers to put the documents that the banks are willing to accept, and it's all tied down, and we get the money.
I understand. I was
You're
just
sort of asking how's the sausage made, and that's beyond my ability to explain.
And, you know, I don't want to go out of my depth either. As you know, Jesse Bausch and Dan Siegel specialize in this type of bond work, and they prepared these documents. I did consult with them yesterday in anticipation of the meeting just to try to get a high level understanding. And I think at least high level of Mr. Seeley, the numbers in the authorizing resolutions, it spells out a little bit of that 8.6 million, 1.9 is for the equipment lease, and the balance 6.681 is for the fire station and everything else. And those resolutions are kind of the best explanation in those whereas clauses of what each of those documents do.
okay.
And so in the 20-year option for the equipment lease kind of spells out that you're entering into the lease agreement with Truist as the financing for that. And then the bulk of the other documents are for everything else. And that is just like Mr. Seeley said, that it's a way for us to use the EDA to not have to have a GO bond. And then we're collateralizing the debt by assigning certain rights to the lender in the event that we default. And those are pretty standard commercial
You
transactions.
mean Mr. Cohen?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen.
That's what I lost was I was looking and I can't find it again. I thought I'd marked it and I can't find the numbers again. So if that's the way this is,
Yeah,
all right. So if that's what they're tied to, I'm good then. I now
Yes, sir.
understand the flow.
yeah. In section D, the first two documents, the two resolutions, spell out which of that 8.6, what's going to what in really broad terms. And those are just caps. So those are the maximum do not exceed amounts that are being authorized.
All right, thank you. I'm good, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item D if there's no other questions.
I'll second.
There's a motion to approve consent agenda item D. There's a second, Mr. Forehand. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Geis.
You want to do closed session?
Yep. What's that? No, we're gonna go to closed session. What we'll do now is we can't do public comment until 7:30, so we do have a closed session to. I was gonna come back and do 4 and then. Oh, I guess that's a grant writing. All right. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do agenda item number 4 since it's pretty simple, and then we'll go into closed session. Agenda item number 4 is further discussion of possible grant writing position. Mr. Pardon.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you know, we discussed this before, and our recommendation, if the board is interested in pursuing this, would be to go out with a request for proposals, and we can write the RFP in such a way that if there are individuals such as retired government employees that Mrs. Long was referring to that may have interest in it, that they would be able to provide a proposal, and we can see what we get. That we think that would probably be the best way to approach it, as opposed to hiring an employee. And there is no funding for this, of course, so it would come out of the fund balance. But if the board is interested in pursuing this, our recommendation would be to do the request for proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Pardon.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Black.
I just have, I like that. I do like that idea. I just have one question though. At the last meeting, at the public comment time, I think Mr. Tickle came to us in regards to saying that there was money out there, and he's actually talked to me on the phone. I think he's talked to Mr. Thomas as well about the potential for a certain money being out there. My only question is like, how would we, I like the RFP idea, but how do we know, I guess, how do we initially find out about what grants are available?
I think we would rely on that person to some extent, but we would continue to use all available avenues, staff members, outside sources that have expertise. I don't think we would drop our vigilance simply because we have someone that's going to write the grant, but that would be a piece of it, as well as many other avenues that we would look at to identify opportunities.
Yeah, Mr. Parker, I like that, but that's my only concern, is just trying to dig through and find those, because that's one of the first steps, and the key step is actually saying, hey, we might be eligible for this,
Right.
And digging through that, because over the summer we got that we get that issue of County News, and the list this summer of what was available in the billions and trillions for this and that and this, and there's a lot of money out there. I just, and obviously some of it we wouldn't be eligible for, but maybe some of it we would. So it's sifting through all of that is my concern. That's all. Thank you.
How would the board like to proceed? Motion be in order.
I'll motion option 3, which is the recommended by staff.
Second.
All right, there's a motion that we give staff permission to use option 3 to further look for a possible grant writer position. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, now we're gonna go into closed session. Mr. Black, would you please read the.
I move that this board convene in closed session meeting pursuant to number 1, the contract exception of section 2.23711A29 of the Code of Virginia, to discuss the terms or scope of contracts relating to economic development projects in the Reedy Church and Port Royal districts, where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the board. And to the prospective business and investment of public funds exemptions of sections 2.2, 37, 11, A5, and A6 of the Code of Virginia to discuss prospective businesses and economic development project in the Western Caroline District requiring the investment of public funds where no previous public announcement has been made.
There's a motion, we go into closed session. There's a second. A second, Mr. Thomas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now in closed session. Be back at 7:30 or thereabouts. I'll take a motion to reconvene in open session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and proper second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Black.
I move that the
certification.
Caroline County Board of Supervisors certify that to each of the best of each board member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in closed meeting to which this certification applies, and two, only such public business matters were, as were identified in the motion convening the closed session were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
Mr. Forehand, you so certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Black, you so certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Sealy, you so certify?
I so certify.
Mrs. Long, you so certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Thomas, you so certify?
And to be clear, I did second that motion.
Yes, you did. Thank
Okay.
you. And I so certify also. At this point, we'll move to our public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for citizens to discuss any issues they have or they want to discuss before the board. Please address all your comments to the board, not to any individual member of the board. Please state your name, your voting district, and you have 3 minutes. Is there any, public comment is now open. Is there anyone who'd like to speak during public comment?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, Mr.
John Hudson from Reedy Church District. I want to make a couple of comments and congratulate the state police. They finally seem to have got the traffic on Route 30 when the state fair is in existence. They finally fixed it. It was really smooth this year. And then I want to comment on the state fair this year. For some reason, the state fair started out, the first 4 days, it was really, really loud and noisy. And I'm not sure what went on. And then all of a sudden on Tuesday afternoon, it got deathly quiet. And it was quiet the rest of the concert. So I don't know if Farm Bureau got called or if you received the email or somebody here called. I do not know. And then the concert series started. And I'm not sure what the solution is going to be to control the noise from the concert series, because it is really, really grating on a lot of people's nerves. And the last 4, everybody now has a little sound meter. And we run around all over the place just measuring the levels. And I spent my time the last 4 down by below the water tank on Route 30 by where the gate is. I made sure I was not on their property. I was on Newport News' property. And I measured the levels there probably for an hour each concert. And those levels were not 65 dB, they were 74 and up. And so then we said, okay, let's get another meter and go down. So each time we went down, I think, with like 4 different measuring devices. And the levels were constantly above 65. So I don't know if it's being amplified. I'm not sure what's going on. But something needs to give with that, because we are just getting beat to death. And anyway, I would like to ask a comment. I'm not sure, I can't address this to anybody, but does anybody on the board know what happened to the solar panels at the prison over on Prison Road? Did they decommission those and go burn them in a landfill somewhere? But that's all my comments for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I'm not sure about that. I'll look into that, Mr. Hudson. I'm not sure what happened to the solar panels. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during public comment? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during public comment? Final call. Is there anyone who'd like to speak during public comment? Seeing no one coming forward, public comment is now closed. Informational items, Mr. Cullen.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we included your status of capital projects. You won't see that a whole lot of changes on that since the last meeting. We do have Bowling Green Harvest Festival on Saturday. Frog Level Festival the 29th of this month, as always. Election Day is the 8th. We kind of slipped up on that. It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday. And then the board meeting moved to the 10th at 6 o'clock on November. Veterans Day, the offices are closed on the 11th. And VACO starts in Richmond. VACO conference, annual conference starts in Richmond on the 12th, runs through Tuesday, the 15th. Obviously, Thanksgiving is going to be on the 24th this year, and offices will be closed on the day that day and the day after. And it may be the governor gives off half a day on the 23rd. That's always subject to the governor's holiday calendar type thing. So that's really all the dates that we have right now shown.
Thank you, Mr. Cully. Closing board comments. Mr. Forehand.
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Black.
None.
Mr. Seeley.
No, sir.
Mr. Long.
No, sir.
Mr. Thomas.
Contrarian that I am. We do have early voting on the weekends. Well, early voting started on the 23rd. We do have early voting on October 29th, which is a Saturday, and November 5th, which is a Saturday. 9 to 5, I believe, are the times.
We have some Sunday voting also.
There is no Sunday.
There is no
Oh, there is no
Sunday
Sunday,
voting
that's
this
right.
year.
I remember that. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Cully.
You had asked to maybe schedule a meeting with the social service board. It
Yes.
came up. Do you want to handle that?
Yes. I mean, having the meeting.
Did you want me to just?
No, go ahead.
I'm
sorry.
It come up during the staff meeting call that social services is still working remotely for right much of their staff. And so Mr. Underwood had asked that maybe we schedule a meeting where we could meet with the social service board. We're just trying to figure out whether the board wants to meet with the social service board, then we can extend an invitation to them. Whether you want to talk to your social service board members about why they're doing that or allowing that. Obviously, Mrs. Long's on the social service board with that. But anyway, Mr. Underwood.
And we have a meeting on Tuesday.
Y'all do, but Mr. Underwood was thinking maybe the
board to board. I was thinking we'd have a board to board meeting
like we do with the school board. Except the social service board not being elected has you have a little more input to them directly because you directly appoint them.
Directly appoint, directly on the point. Board members, do you have any? I mean, do you want to meet with them or?
I mean, the regional director was pretty straight up with us. And we've never talked about it since even her recommendation was in this day and time that the way to operate that board is through the county administrator to administer it. So it's not a simple endeavor anymore.
I think it'd be good to meet with them personally.
It's up to us.
I think it would give us an opportunity to ask questions and kind of gauge their engagement.
I could certainly have it put on the agenda for Tuesday. And if you all send us some dates, send me some dates that you think would work for staff and everyone, and then I'll see.
Okay.
That's setting it up.
If maybe you and Mr. Cully could work together, it would be good to try to get a date and then come back to the board. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cully. I just have one comment regarding the state fair. I was remiss in forgetting to not thanking the Frog Level Volunteer Fire Department for providing service during the state fair. You know, we talk about not having enough volunteers, but they stretched themselves and covered the fair. So I want to certainly say thank you, and we certainly appreciate them for covering the state fair for those 10 days. And that's my only comment. I'll take a motion to adjourn. And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Motion carries before 8 o'clock.